All right, let's get started. Laura,
Okay.
you want to lead us off with any words of wisdom, or do you just want me
Yeah.
to?
So I just wanted to thank the people on the call for joining us. I know it's also being recorded and being made available. So I just want to thank you guys for your partnership. So frequently at Mathnasium, our center directors, and for those people that don't know me that are on this call, that you received the invitation from me, my husband Dan and I are the owners of the Mathnasium that you've either inquired about, attended previously, or currently attend. And it's really important for us to be involved in our community. Besides just providing our math tutoring, it's really important for us to do things that benefit the community. And one of them is providing information and resources about the schools that your children attend, but also, a lot of people are coming to our learning center to get their kids ready to be prepared for college. This is, what we as parents spend a lot of time getting ready for and investing in our children's future. And then this time comes and sorry for the dog barking, it comes a lot quicker than we all think it's going to. And I know that so much has changed in the last few years. And I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. So we really want to partner with you guys since you are amazing, and just let our community know about the resources that are out there and provide this as a service. And we'll look forward to doing these again in the future as well. So Mathnasium family that's out there, if these are things that you want to hear about, you all got an email from me. You can respond back to me and just let me know what other things you'd like to see us do from a community standpoint outside of the math education piece. And that's it. So I'm going to just turn it over to you guys and let you do your thing. I'm dying to hear your presentation.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Lori, and thanks for having us. We love doing things like this. I think more than anything, Terry and I consider ourselves members of the community. And whenever we go to parties or our children's graduation parties, we find that moms are asking us like, hey, what do we do about this college? Or what happens if we write about this essay? So we kind of feel like we're just moms helping other parents. And this just happens to be our job as well. So we consider this just kind of part of our world. So thank you for having us. We really enjoy what we do. And we thank you for doing this for the Mathnasium family. We enjoy being a part of that as well. A little bit about us. Terry and I are part of a business called College Solutions. College Solutions serves clients nationwide and worldwide. We do take clients in the Las Vegas area as well as in the California area. We have counselors in both regions and are happy to meet with clients in that area. I myself am located in Virginia. I went to the University of Virginia for undergrad. My degree is in rhetoric, which I still get made fun of for at family reunions, but I was very interested in political rhetoric. I did my postgrad work at Oxford in the UK, and then worked for Joe Lieberman as one of his writers after graduation, and loved it. I really enjoyed being a writer, but decided DC was not all it was cracked up to be for me, and ended up in admissions working at the University of Virginia. And that's really where my career in higher education started. Spent some time, about 5 years in admissions, and then started private college coaching about 10 years ago. So I've been with College Solutions for about 10 years. I own this practice and work side by side with Terry. And we're just excited to be here tonight. I'm going to ask Terry to watch the chat and answer questions for you guys. And we'll certainly take questions along the way. But feel free to shout out, raise your hand, whatever you need. We talk about this all the time to our spouses, to our children, whoever will listen. So know that we're here to answer whatever's on your mind. All right, I will share my screen and we will jump in. Okay. All right, so we're calling this Clarity Amidst Chaos. I feel like there are a lot of rumors and scare tactics going around about college admission, and tonight I really just wanted to break that down for you and make it into something that you could make sense of and that you could share with your family. So what's changed? I get this question a lot. Basically, the new announcement, since COVID has been test optional. Is test optional a thing? Can my student really go test optional, or is it not a thing? Are there more applications now that the common application is truly common to more schools? Is there a preference for early applications? And what's the deal with demonstrated interest? These are the 4 trends we're going to go over tonight. I'll show you some data to back it up. And we will make these slides available to you if you want to hold on to the data. I'm a data geek, so I always like these things, and you're welcome to them as well. Testing. So there's 3 different kinds of test brands or test classes within the test optional, test blind, and test for merit aid process. And we talk about testing as standardized testing. So this will be SATs or ACTs for college admission. And there are many colleges and universities now that are saying they are test optional, which means a student does not have to submit a test score. It is what they say as optional. I'm going to show you some data in a minute that may make you think otherwise, but they're saying it is optional. The other label for some colleges is called test blind. This is what the University of California system is doing. They are saying, we're not looking at any scores. If you send them, we're not looking at them. If you don't send them, we don't care if you don't send them. We are completely blind. That's different than test optional. So keep those terms in mind. Test scores for merit aid. So a school may say we are test optional, but in teeny tiny print at the bottom, they're going to say, oh, but if you want money, free money based on how cool your student is, we're going to need those test scores. So just be mindful of what they're saying is optional and just how optional is it. Sounds like I'm a lawyer. I'm not. I'm married to one, but I'm not. I'll show you what the data means. The blue vertical chart here is going to show you an admit rate with a test score. And this is based off of the 2020 admission cycle. The yellow kind of striped vertical column here is an admit rate without a test. So you can see that colleges are admitting students more frequently when they do have an SAT or an ACT test score. It's not to say that students are not admitted when they are test optional. It just seems that there is an advantage to test submitters, sometimes 2-fold, 2.5-fold, something to that sort. So when we talk to students, we counsel students about whether or not to go test optional. We really think about that, especially when thinking about some of these very selective schools that are considering kind of the context that the student is coming from, and would they have access to test prep or test support in any way or shape or form. More data, because I'm a nerd. This is just going to give you percentages of students that did not submit test scores. And then of those students, which ones were admitted with scores and which ones were not which ones were admitted with scores and which ones were admitted without scores. I mean, you can see at like Boston University, 25% of students were admitted with scores, 14% of students were admitted without scores. Schools like University of Georgia, 46% of students were admitted with scores, whereas 32% of students were admitted without scores. Not necessarily a giant difference, but if you're on the bubble and you have a test score, I think it would be enough to push you over. Whereas if you're on the bubble and you don't, it may push your student to the wait list, or at least to that discussion part of the admissions process where a student goes up for debate. So again, this is something to think about when you're trying to strategize about how to set your child up for success in the admission process. Oops. Come on, computer. Oh, I'm pushing buttons now. Wait a minute. Lost my cursor. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Selectiveness. A lot of families will say to me, are really that many more kids applying? Yes, and it may not necessarily be that there are more kids applying. There are just students who are submitting more applications. So it's not necessarily number of heads, it's the number of people submitting number of paper applications or electronic applications. This past year, UCLA had over 149,000 applications. That terrifies me for California residents and for out-of-state residents. I mean, just to think that one of those state institutions that's providing quality education is having nearly 150,000 applications, that's really scary. Overall, the common application, which is common to many schools in the United States and abroad, saw a 21.3% increase in applications. About 7.5 million applications were processed last year in 2021. Many colleges are reporting they had their lowest admit rate in history. So we're looking at schools like Occidental, schools like Brown, Colgate, NYU. And we get it. More applications is going to drive the admission percentage down. This is just general fractions. But at the same time, if one of your children is in that fraction, it means a lot. It would mean a lot to me if it were my child. So just keep in mind that more students are applying to more schools. Therefore, the number of applications is going up. Okay. When to apply. There are lots of different options on the menu for when you want to apply. And a lot of families will look at me like, which one do I choose? Like, which one is the appetizer? Which one's the entree? There's lots of different options. Early decision, early action, regular decision are the big three. Early decision is binding. So I remind my students that if you apply early decision and you were admitted, you are done. So D for done, early decision, done. This means that if you apply early decision to a school and that school chooses to admit you, the student, you are bound to attend that school no matter what. The guidance counselor signs an agreement that says they will support the student attending the school. The parents sign an agreement saying, yes, we understand we're sending our kid to this school if he or she gets admitted in early decision. It's a big deal to apply early decision. It is also a significant advantage to apply in early decision. It can sometimes double or triple a student's chances in applying early decision. So keep that in mind. Early action is non-binding. So this means you're saying to a college, I like you. If you admit me, I will think about it. So you're applying early, you're showing them that you're interested, but you are not binding yourself to that school. Chances are not necessarily doubled or tripled in this instance. They might go up a little bit, but they're not statistically significant usually. Last is regular decision. These are typically a January 1st deadline, and then you hear back end of March, early April. I usually don't recommend regular decision unless a very strange circumstance happens, but otherwise, I'm really encouraging students to get those applications in before the December holidays. Just to give you an idea of early decision, a lot of colleges are filling their freshman class from early decision. So this is showing you that the most selective colleges, colleges that admit less than 10% of their applicant pool, are filling up 51% of their class from early decision. So they're already half full by the time they start reading those January applications. Even those schools that are selective, as this chart calls it, which are admitting 25 to 50% of the applicant pool, they are filling up 42% of their freshman class. So again, if you're not applying early decision, you're missing out a little bit. And that's okay. Some people choose not to apply early decision for personal reasons, for financial reasons, or a variety of reasons. So you're well within your rights not to apply early decision. But I want you to be aware of what's happening with these numbers so you don't get behind the 8 ball. Demonstrated interest. This is just a fancy word for you showing colleges how much you like them. And colleges are going to say, oh, no, we don't care about this. You know, everything is equal. Don't worry about it. I have to say that my observations prove otherwise. Typically, when a student shows that they are interested in a college, it tells a college that that student is more likely to accept an offer from that college. And the reason this matters is because US News and World Report ranks a college based on how many times that college offers to students and how many of those students say yes. We call that a yield. That percentage of students that says yes based off of how many offers were extended to students. So a college doesn't want to make an offer to a kid that's going to say no. It's like asking somebody to the prom that you don't think is going to say yes. Nobody wants to do that. It's embarrassing and it makes your boss unhappy. So they don't want to do it, right? So colleges want to offer to students who have shown that they are interested. So students who have visited campus, students who have met with a regional representative who go to a high school, students who have followed them on social media, students who have read the emails the college has sent, students who have written emails to the college, students who have applied early. All of these indicators are things that the college has decided demonstrates interest and therefore predicts a higher level of yield. So we say to students, you need to demonstrate interest, because if you don't, a college then infers this student doesn't like me. Even if I offer them, they're going to say no. We've had many schools this year, including Villanova, including Case Western, that have waitlisted or deferred students basically on the fact that they didn't show enough interest. So you really have to be careful with, especially if it's your likely school or your safety school and a student thinks, oh, I'm getting in there anyway. I'm not going to go visit. I'm not going to write an email. Oh gosh, be careful. Because if you don't pay them attention, they may not pay you any attention. And that is becoming more and more prevalent this year and next year, I'm sure. So then students look at me and say, help, what do I do? Yes, I totally get it. This is stressful. This is where folks like Terry and I can help, or parents can help brainstorm. This is where I say to families, you need to start thinking about a child's narrative. And I know this sounds so icky and gross, but it really does make a difference in the admissions process. Having been in that office and know how they talk about students, you need to have a story about your student that resonates with the reader. And the way that I explain this to families is that there is a difference between a pointy student and a rounded student. My family, my parents used to say to me, just be well-rounded. That's what we want you to be. Do some community service and, do some art and blah, blah, blah. Just be a well-rounded student. Unfortunately, now in the admissions process, I applied 20 something years ago. Well-rounded is pretty boring. Lots of students are well-rounded, which is great, but boring. So we're trying to encourage students to step away from being rounded and being pointed. Being a pointy student means you have a point of view. I'll give you an example. I had a student last year who was very interested in sports marketing. He played a sport, but he wasn't so great. So he decided he would be the announcer of his high school team. Very cool. But that was kind of it. He just kept saying, I want to be a sports journalist. I want to be in sports marketing. So my team and I said to him, well, have you reached out to the sports columnist of your local newspaper? He's like, no, what would I say? Maybe you want to shadow him? Oh, okay. So he reaches out, he shadows the sports editor for a day. They get along really well. The guy invites him back to intern for the summer. Great. He does a really nice job, gets to edit a lot of interesting things. Everything goes great. At the end of the summer, this guy at the newspaper says, oh, by the way, I have a contact at the local not pro, but minor league baseball team. Would you like to meet them? Would you like to set up some sort of time to set up, a meet and greet with the manager? And he's like, of course, why not? So he meets and greets with the manager. Manager offers him an internship for the next summer. He interns with the minor league team the next summer. and then did a summer program at Syracuse and their sports management program, which is one of the best in the country, and had this really interesting kind of line of extracurriculars between being a sports announcer, having this internship shadow opportunity at the newspaper. Then he'd worked for a minor league team and done an academic program at a top ranked school. He had a point of view. He was a pointee student. So anytime somebody read this student, they're like, oh, this is the guy that likes sports media, of course. So this is the kind of thing you're trying to cultivate in a student. It's not always this easy. Most students have no idea what they like. And if they do, it changes on a weekly basis. I've worked with teenagers for 10 years. I get this. So know that students can change their minds. They can pivot, but know too that community service goes a long way. So if it's just that your student doesn't have anything that they really like, help them find places in the community that they can reach people or do meaningful service. Service is a way to develop a point. I had one student, I guess 3 years ago now, he just couldn't get motivated, quite honestly, and mom was frustrated. And so I just started placing him in various community service opportunities once a month. And the first Saturday of every month, he had to go to one community service thing that I found for him. And he didn't like me for it, and that was fine, but at least mom didn't have to do it. And so I found something. And so finally, he started volunteering at a place called Code VA, which is a place that teaches young students about coding in the state of Virginia. And he really liked it. He loves computers. He loves gaming. It was awesome. And he doesn't mind being around younger kiddos. So he ended up really liking it. He ended up working up at their summer camp and then mentoring one of the students there on the side. And it really just blossomed into this beautiful story about how he was flustered of going to this place in the beginning and then developed a passion for students, but also for computer science. So if you're struggling with developing a point, I always start with service. And if your student doesn't like it, you can always blame it on the college planner or whoever it is that you're working with. Sometimes that helps, or, being a parent stinks sometimes too, I know. So that's narrative building. A lot of families will say to me, how do I do this in the wake of COVID? There's not a lot of face-to-face community service. Like, what the heck do I do? Just try to quantify it. So if it is virtual, try to quantify number of hours. During the first year of COVID in 2020, I had a student who did like a little reading group for the kids in his neighborhood on Zoom. So every Friday afternoon, he would read Dr. Seuss books to the kids in his neighborhood on Zoom. And he bought one of those silly Dr. Seuss hats and would sit in front of his camera and just for like 20 minutes, read Dr. Seuss books. And he did it for like 8 weeks. And there were probably 10 kids there, but we quantified it for number of hours, number of kids reached, and put it in his application. So if you can count kind of the reach of service, that really helps. And just get creative, use Zoom, or I know we're all zoomed out, but, try to get creative. I have one student who plays music at an elderly facility, but they play outside and the elderly facility opens the windows so they can hear the music from being inside and being safe. That works. You got to think outside the box sometimes. I also like to teach students to develop a new skill. I had one student who really wanted to learn how to knit. And so I was like, okay, YouTube, like you guys are geniuses on YouTube, like learn how to knit. And so she did. And I found this really cool nonprofit online that you can knit for veterans, homeless veterans. And so she started knitting scarves for homeless veterans and getting her friends to do it. And they were like having parties and watching Gossip Girl, whatever the cool show is they watch, and knitting, and they were having so much fun, and it was cool. But she developed a new skill set, which was really interesting. So those sorts of things, I'm just trying to teach our students that you've got to step outside yourself in order to develop a point, really. And as Lori alluded to before, finding the right college is also about finding the right fit. We consider fit to have 3 prongs: an academic fit, a social fit, and a financial fit. When we're looking for the right fit, I visit probably 15 colleges a year. I was just in Oregon and Northern California a couple weeks ago, and we're always sitting in on classes, interviewing college admissions folks to learn about what kind of learning support is available for students, what kind of learning styles are best at certain schools. All of those things we're learning about with each college. What the social scene is like, how safe do students feel? Do they walk home by themselves? What sort of safety precautions do they take? What sort of activities are cool? Is it outdoorsy? Is it going to the mall? What kind of stuff do students do for fun? But then the value of an undergraduate education is still really important. I'm constantly looking at the Department of Education study that quantifies starting salaries for students by college, by major. It's called the scorecard. It's a Department of Education study. It's really cool if you like data. But merit aid outside of that is also really important. Terry and I love to look for merit aid. I went to college on a Coca-Cola scholarship and used to sit on their selection committee for many years, and still tell students, like, there's lots of free money out there if you're just willing to look for it. So between finding the right value college and then identifying opportunities for merit aid, I think that's the best way to find the best value. Okay, I know I've talked a lot. I've given you my personal email address. I know that this is so much information. Always know that you can email and ask questions. I am glad to, point you in the right direction, answer any of your questions. Terry and I offer free meetings with folks if you just want to sit down and chat. We're totally okay with that. So please know that we're here to help you and support you as you go through this process. Okay, any questions?
I don't see any in the chat right now.
Okay, you guys are quiet.
Don't be shy. I think this was, I mean, this is a lot of really good information, especially the part about the test optional and everything. I think that was very informative.
Oh, we did get a question. Would you please share your email again? I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want me to put mine in there too?
Sure.
Yours.
Both of us. Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions? Don't be shy.
Oh, good. Here's one. At what grade would you recommend getting a college counselor? That's a great question. I see it all, honestly. I mean, I've had families start with us as early as 6th grade, which is a little early. I mean, there are some families that are considering magnet programs and boarding schools, and they want, some feedback earlier. Sure. I really think a 10th grader is at the right stage to start talking. Although some families have very mature 9th graders that want to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. I met with 2 9th graders today and they were ready to rumble. You know your children better than we do. If they're terrified of the idea and this would just make things worse, it's not the right time. If they're asking you questions about, like, where'd you go to school and what was it like? And, how far can I go from here? Or things like that, it may be helpful to have somebody say, these are the kinds of colleges that are out there. Tell me more about what you like. That would be useful. I think having a third party that is not tied to either parent or to the child is helpful. And then you have somebody to say, like, okay, I hear you saying this and mom and dad are saying this. What do we think about doing that? And then coming back and discussing it. I'm also a deadlines person. So, like, I always put a date on this of, like, we're going to do it by Friday and then we're going to circle back and I'm going to text you, because my students don't read their emails. So I always have to text them. But 10th grade ish, but 9th grade if they are mature. 11th grade works. Yes. So 11th grade, I usually get a lot of questions because you're, right in the thick of it. Absolutely. So 11th grade, we'll jump right in and we'll meet frequently, just to make sure you've got everything well in hand. But yes, we can certainly help you in 11th grade. We don't take 12th graders in the fall, just because once a student gets to 12th grade, come August or September, we don't feel like our services are right for them. But we do take families with 11th graders.
There's a question about waitlisting. It says, what are we seeing happening with this year's waitlists?
Oh, good question. The wait lists have already started to move. So I will say I've seen Wake Forest move. I've seen most of the Ivies move. I don't think Stanford's moved. Maybe that's the one exception. And they're moving like 5, 10, 15 at a time. Not substantial movement, I would say. Again, most of these schools enrolled a large majority of their class with early decision. So they're not looking for that many students. And some of the wait list can become about politics or donor relationships. So that's another part of the process that families have to juggle. So you may not see movement if you're not one of those priorities for a college. But yes, wait lists have been moving since like April 28th, and probably will stop, I guess, by that first week of June. We'll be done soon.
There was a question before that, Terry. What are some of the best resources to find out about college deadlines? Is there one place you can find this information?
Oh, gosh, I wish. That would be so great. A lot of families come to me with spreadsheets because it is hard to identify one place with all that information. I would be doing the same thing if I were a mom in this situation. There's not really one place. I mean, the only free resource that comes to mind is called Big Future. Big Future is a resource that is provided by the College Board, which provides the SAT. It's got pros and cons. I will say students that work with us, we provide deadlines for them. It's all integrated into our timeline system. So you get that when you work with some private counselors, but you can do it on your own. It just requires spreadsheets. Let's see, and there was one more up here. Thought I missed it. Waitlist we got. Okay, college deadlines we got. Okay, for college admissions in general, is it better for students to go to a high school that is quite prestigious, where they might work a lot harder to be in the top 10 to 20%, or a smaller, less prestigious school in the same community where they're likely to be in the very top of their class? Great question. Don't you love the answer? It depends. It depends. A lot of these top tier schools have relationships with colleges, and this is part of the reason that you pay these top tier high schools your money, because their folks play tennis with some of the admissions folks. They know people, and that's great. I will say I have worked with students from Choate and St. Paul's and Groton and Thatcher, lots of great boarding schools, even some top tier private schools like Marin or places like that. And they're all fabulous. I will say colleges seem to want, the very selective schools seem to want the best of the best. So even if you're coming from the very best school, if you're coming from one of the tippy top private schools, or you're coming from, a rural school like where I came from that had no AP classes, the tippy top colleges are really looking for the tippy top students. There are some exceptions like Thomas Jefferson High School here in Virginia. It's the #1 public school in the country. Those students, like the top 10, 20%, get into Ivy League schools, but that's because they're taking aerospace physics in 9th grade, literally.
Oh my God.
So I consider them an outlier. So to answer your question, I think it depends on what colleges you're looking at. If you're looking at in-state colleges and your high school has a good reputation, I think the first option could work. Otherwise, I would say you really need to be in a context where your student can be one of the best, if not the best. That would be my advice.
And then there was another question that what advice or feedback can you give to parents and or students who attend a junior college before transferring to a 4-year college?
Great question. I actually love the junior college route. I say to families, like, this is the best kept secret out there. A, it's a great value, and B, it's a really strong community, and it just supports a student in their kind of learning path along the way. As a junior college student, you should be looking at the undergraduate requirements for the 4-year college you want to attend. So for instance, if I'm at a community college and I want to go to the University of Virginia, I would be going to their website and looking at what are the undergraduate requirements to graduate from the University of Virginia. And they're going to say 4 history classes, 2 writing classes, 1 foreign language credit, et cetera, et cetera. So as a junior college student, I'm going to try to start chipping away at those credits so that when I get to the University of Virginia, I can say, okay, I've done that and I've done that, and I'm halfway on that. So all I have to do is these 3 things and then my major, and then you have to give me a degree. So you don't want to spend too much time on kind of elective credit in junior college. You really want to stick with the core classes.
Also too, I'm just going to add, and I don't know, Kim, who asked this question, I don't know if you're a California or Nevada resident. I do know that in Southern California, the transfer rate, USC and UCLA are like impossible. Okay, you're in California, awesome. Getting into UCLA or USC and going to a junior college, like the transfer rate is so much higher if your child goes to Santa Monica City College and transfers into UCLA or USC. I know a lot of families have taken that route. It saves you a ton of money. I have friends who their kids went to junior colleges and their son got into Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And these were kids that never would have gotten into Berkeley or USC or UCLA because they went to the community colleges. So I think in California, with how competitive it is, it's a really, really amazing. Yeah. Okay. So they were thinking of either Santa Monica Junior College or West LA. I don't know if there's a difference between those two. I don't know if you guys have any insight. If
there's not, I mean, if you're looking at the UCs or even USC, I mean, they're all going to consider those credits similarly. But Lori's right. I mean, that is, I hate to say the easiest, but one of the best routes to take if you're trying to overcome just how ridiculous it is to get into one of the UC schools. I don't envy you for having to deal with how rigorous it is to get into one of the UC schools. And now with the housing issues at Berkeley as it is, it's just annoying. So yeah, I think the junior college route makes a lot of sense.
There's a great question. Speaking of UCs, it says, if we're not using test scores, what would set the student apart from others? What are the UC colleges looking for? GPA, essay, et cetera, and how would you rate those in order of importance?
Great call. Yeah, so now that UCs have said no test scores, now what, right? It's like they're always changing the game, which keeps it interesting, I will say, keeps me reading. If there are no test scores, if a school is test blind, like the UCs, then what? GPA, course rigor is always going to be first important. So you want a student to be taking the most rigorous courses they can. You know, for some schools that's AP, for some schools that's IB, for some schools that's honors. I have always spoken with colleges, the UCs, the privates in California, and they all say, students are evaluated in the context from which they come. So whatever is offered at the high school is what will be expected of the student. So if APs are not offered, APs are not expected. If APs are offered, hop to it. So that's the expectation. So rigor is first, then comes the GPA or the grades. I encourage my students to shoot for as many A's or A minuses as possible, especially if they're on that bubble between an A minus and a B plus. I really try to light a candle under them because that bump in GPA makes a huge difference. So if they're one of those bubble students, incentivize it, whatever you got to do, light a fire. Grades really matter after curriculum. After that, I think it really comes down to recommendations and essays to round out the picture. Recommendations can get tricky because some of my students, especially on the West Coast, go to larger high schools where some teachers may not know their teacher. Some students may not know their teachers as well. I write tip sheets for my students of like, here's what's awesome about you. Here's what I think your teacher could use in a recommendation. I'm not writing the recommendation for the teacher. I'm just writing a cliff notes. So the student can, take a box of cookies and this little tip sheet with their name on it and say, hey, I'm so thankful you're writing my recommendation. Here are some things that I thought could be useful when you're thinking about what to say in my letter. Cheese. That sort of thing helps. So especially if a student is a pointy student, helping them reiterate that point of view. And then essays are always critical. The UCs have 4 essays. They're very interesting. They're probably some of the most fun essays in my book. But I think essays are fun. So don't necessarily believe me, but I think they're fun. They are meant to be kind of mini personal statements. So they are meant to be authentic. A sense of humor is welcome with the UCs. Many of their admissions officers have said they like to laugh, and at least one of them. So that's always a good thing. Self-deprecating humor is something that I've seen go over really well with the UCs. And it needs to be reflective. So it can't just be I like football, I play center, it's taught me diligence, perseverance, and hard work. Blah, but if you've played center and it's taught you the importance of geometry in football and, you've learned to love geometry as a result, cool, tell me more. But it's got to be reflective. It's got to have some gusto. We brainstorm with our students, we edit essays with our students, but it's so important they have a point of view. So really encourage your students to think about that.
I just want to ask a follow-up question to what you just said, and I don't know. My understanding too about the UC system is that first generation college student is a huge, big deal. And first generation, you have a much higher chance of getting in if you're first generation.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
It is. First gen for the UCs actually has a different tag. So all files have tags on them, donors, African-Americans, Hispanic Americans, legacies, all different kinds of tags. First gens have a tag for UCs. So yes, being a first gen is a big deal.
And I know they don't care if you went there.
Not anymore. Sorry. Some schools do.
UCLA definitely does not.
Sorry. No.
Let's see here.
Okay. One of the question was, my daughter wants to be a veterinarian. Would you suggest taking the junior college route or straight to a UC?
Great question. It depends on how old she is right now. If she's a younger student, if she's like a 9th or a 10th grader, I think what I would do is I would get her enrolled in one of these pre-college veterinary programs, like one of these like tech programs over the summer to see if she really likes it, if she's really serious. If that doesn't work with your schedule or it doesn't fit, I try to get her to shadow a veterinarian. Most vets are very open to that. Even with COVID restrictions, they seem to be more open to that. I have a couple of California students that are doing that this summer. So I would try to get her practical experience before kind of tracking out her education. If she's serious and you think this is going to work, I would lean toward, well, it depends on her grades too. If her grades are eligible for a UC, I think it's worth it to look into a four-year institution. If you're worried that her grades are not quite there, or she needs a couple more years just to solidify her record, then I think a junior college makes sense too.
And she also has interned with a veterinarian last year and this summer. So that's awesome.
Well done.
Yes. Then there is, since you mentioned the importance of shooting for an A- over a B+, does that mean kids who don't have GPAs over 3.5 to 3.7 have no chance of getting into a UC school?
No. Please don't think that. I was just trying to say that students that are on the bubble, if they can study for that extra 20 minutes and get the A- and get those extra GPA points, that's worth it. But I've seen students with straight Bs get into a UC before.
Wow.
So I don't think it's completely outrageous to think that you've got to have really good personal statements and outstanding recommendations.
Do you think former foster youth get any shine? I would think that could be a very compelling story.
It needs to be presented the right way, which I'm sure could be. But I think telling that story would be really important.
Okay, I think we've answered all of the questions. If anybody has any others. Oh, there was another question that I totally bypassed. What is the next step in getting started with you guys?
Oh, sure. You can email Terry or me. Terry is Terry at College Solutions, and I'm just Margaret at College Solutions. My name is at the bottom of my Zoom box if Margaret's a tricky one. So there's lots of A's in the middle of it. So feel free to reach out to us. At first meeting is complimentary. We're not about, tips and tricks. We're just here to offer information. So know that that's open to you. You can say you were referred to us by Mathnasium. We'll know where you came from, and we'll be glad to help you along.
There was another one too. When exactly is early decision? And I think that just depends on each school. It's not like universal, correct?
Not usually. Most early decisions are November 1st. There are some exceptions at October 15th, but very few October. Most are November 1st.
Okay, and do colleges still pick a certain amount of students from private school versus public schools, West Coast versus East Coast, etc.?
There's no hard and fast. Most schools that I talk to will say there's no X and Y variables. Most presidents of universities set admission priorities, and every year a college president or a university president will sit down with the dean of admission or the director of enrollment or whatever his or her name is and say, okay, last year we didn't get as many of these students and I want more oboe players, or last year we didn't get as many first generation students and I want more of those. But they will recalibrate what's called the competitive profile, and they will decide what they want in the freshman class for the next year. Usually, from what they tell me, there is no X factor on number of public school kids and number of private school kids. What they will say is they want both parties represented, but they want as many students from different backgrounds as possible. So do with that what you will. I think they're trying to be politically correct. But I always say to students, work with what you got. Don't worry about what you can't control, and just tell your story. These people are still reading them. They're still humans. I've still seen college admissions folks be like, this person wasn't quite qualified, but I just loved them. So I went to bat for him.
And I'm just, this was very informative. Thank you. And it helped lower my anxiety.
So glad.
I'm glad to hear that. I would say, just from having my son, just having gone through this process and just finishing his freshman year, I would say the best thing about hiring a college consultant is that you do not need to be involved in the process, and you can outsource all that stress to somebody else. And the essay, what my son would say is the help with the essays was the biggest thing that really took the stress off of him, and just knowing the deadlines and he had some very ambitious goals of wanting to go to some top universities. So if you have a child that has really ambitious goals and they really want to go to some of these really competitive schools, it is definitely worth taking yourself out of that and outsourcing it to somebody else, so you can still have a relationship with your kid at the end of their senior year in high school. Oh, we heard about your background. Is it possible to hear something from Terry?
I'm going to tell you, I've worked with Terry. She's great. I've known Terry for years, and she's actually worked with my son and really helped my son. But there's my endorsement. Terry, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you. I actually was an independent, well, I still am, but I had a business out in Las Vegas for 6 years, and then also working at the same time with students in Illinois. So I kind of had a different region, but my background is in higher education. I have a master's in higher ed. I've actually worked in several universities. A lot of my time was at American University in Washington, D.C. We've relocated. So I'm actually in Orlando. I was at UCF here for a little while. I worked at one of the local community colleges here as well. Jumped back into private consulting, which is great because I'm very comfortable in this area. So yeah, I've been doing this now at some level. I worked in admissions years and years ago. But a lot of my actual experience was working with orientation, transition, and retention programs at the college level. So part of what I like to bring to our families and students is not only sort of the admissions expertise area, but also like what happens when you get there. So a lot of what I try to do is help prepare families for, okay, you graduated, you got into your school, but now what? 27% of first year students in college either drop out or transfer. So part of our job is to really help make that a seamless transition for everybody, so that your student, even though it can be the best fit school, we want to make sure that they stay. And how do we do that? So that's where a lot of my experience is. And yeah, I've worked with, for anybody on the call who's in the Vegas area, very familiar with all the Vegas public schools and the private schools there as well.
And I would also say, just because I know Terry personally, and also too, I think having two young men that are actually in college right now and having gone through that, like as a parent, Margaret, I don't know what your personal situation is, but I think too, like being a mom and also just like having that experience, I think that also brings a lot to the table if you've had a child, because you just understand it so much more from a mom's standpoint too. And I think that's a huge feather in your cap, is the fact that you've actually had two children that are very different children, that had very different things. So I think that brings a lot of knowledge in working with your clients.
Yeah, I survived, so you can too. All right, well, it looks like, I think we're out of time. Yes?
Yes. Okay. Margaret, Terry, thank you very, very much for making time for our Mathnasium extended families out there and making yourself available. I found this to be extremely helpful, and I really, really appreciate both your time, and I'm seeing all these thank yous coming across. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you jumping on, and thank you for your time and attention.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Hi, thank you again. Enjoy your night.